And it's like, what makes Dune so good? Like, what elevates it to that level where it's like, this is the best movie I've seen in like 3 years, or like since Blade Runner came out, pretty much. Like the best sci-fi movie, hands down.
I have a quick answer for you.
Cool.
It's Denis Villeneuve.
I mean,
Oh,
Thank you.
doesn't miss.
That'll do it for us here on the Lords of Lore Podcast.
All right, good night. But like, seriously, what makes like a movie memorable? Like, what is it that makes a story like stay in your mind? It doesn't have to be. It could be anime, manga, like manga. My bad. It can be like any type of story, a book, a show. Like Ochi, we loved the first season of
True Detective.
True Detective, yeah.
Yep.
It's like none of these stories are connected, but like they have some similarities that just like stick with you. Matt, before we started, I was talking about like it's probably like the fact that there's heavy stakes, and not only that there's stakes, but that they show you that you can like lose in these situations. Because like that's one, like Lord of the Rings, for example. I love Lord of the Rings with all my heart. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I see it once a year, extended edition, 18 hours of film. I've seen the bonus features, like 30 hours of content.
Yep.
But like it has massive stakes, but you don't really ever see the consequences of the,
I agree.
What could happen if you lose.
Yeah.
I feel like that's another issue I have. I mean, there is a little bit, there's like moments. There's like the scene in the looking mirror and with Galadriel where like you see the potential consequences and that stuff. There's like some character deaths, but like that's one thing that made Game of Thrones so iconic was like nobody's safe until season 8. And everybody's safe.
Yeah.
Or like what are those moments that like happen when you guys are like, this is a great story. Like this is now a great story or a great movie or something. Like you guys think of any moments?
I don't moments I'd have to think about. I'll come back to that, but I think like we've talked about this before when I was talking about fantasy movies that are set in modern times and have like this hidden world aspect. Usually I'm not a fan of and you gave me the revelation that's because I enjoy world building so much that when you take such a large chunk of the world building out, like I'm less interested because then it's just like power fantasy opposed to world fantasy. So I think with sci-fi and with just what makes entertaining or like memorable entertainment is not just that it has stakes, because like even like we talked about last week on like some of the reasons why you think Marvel movies are mediocre is because like they retread that same ground. So even something like a Marvel movie I didn't like Age of Ultron, where like the stakes are pretty high. Like we're dealing with like the end of the world, and even to the point where they get the stakes when they win is still not really great. So there are consequences, but you still, I think it's what you said, like you don't feel like there's a possibility that they might lose. And even the character deaths that do happen are not so, monumental that you really take them with you kind of thing. Yeah. They just feel like moments that the studio or the writers put in because it was like, we have to meet these things on the checklist. Whereas I think with Dune, you look at like the whole third act of that movie, or I think maybe even the beginning of the third act where, they're attacked and they fucking lose hard. Like almost everyone that we know so far is gone. I was reading the book, and I think I told you about this off screen last week, Luca. There's a quote in the book. It's just like a quote from a retrospective look at the story of Dune. It's like sayings of the Muad'Dib, and it's like one of the worst things in life, I'm paraphrasing, is realizing that your father is flesh and bone and human. And like I think like that's what gives it an impact, because the director takes the time to build the relationships between characters, that when you lose people in the story, even though their roles are small, we know what they mean to the characters that are still around. And so you feel the loss. Whereas sometimes with like, some Marvel movies or even lesser entertainment, it's just like this character X needs to die, so character Y feels, emotion X. And when you don't really feel the connection is genuine, I feel like it makes it less entertaining or less memorable.
Yeah, totally. Like that's one of my biggest gripes with Marvel. And I think Ochi, we've talked about this too, where like Marvel movies are all good, but none of them are like that top tier. Like the most impactful moment that that I remember is like when I watched Infinity War. Like the first time where there was like major stakes and consequences. But like that's why I was ripping on Marvel so hard last week. It just like I need those moments. Like I need, even Iron Man dying was like, it was a big moment, but I guess something feels lacking in
I
all
didn't
of
hit
that.
you like that.
I mean, it didn't. It really didn't. You know, like
No,
maybe I need to rewatch it. Maybe I need to rewatch it.
No, I only ask because like you always hear the stories. Like I've heard so many people in passing who are like, yo, I cried in the theater. The people next to me cried in the theater. And it's not, yo, I get it. He was number one. He was the first movie. He was in the trenches when he built that first suit. Did I cry? No.
I didn't cry either, but I think like the character loss was tough. But I feel like almost because the Marvel movies are so popular, there's almost like you're sad to see the actor leave because the actor's entertaining, and not so much that Tony Stark was like I think he's a great character, but like I don't know, like the character loss didn't hit me as hard as I think it hit other people. Like Ochi, you and I have a good buddy who cried for a week, like and went and saw the movie multiple times and cried multiple times, and like I'm not gonna dox this person because maybe they don't want to see that, but like I remember receiving Snapchats of them bawling, and I'm like, damn, like
no.
Nice.
Wait. Do you mean every time you saw?
Yeah,
they saw it, they cried.
Yeah.
Word.
Like I think it's great that they would have that sort of effect on somebody, but
I think it was just, there's so many other ways for that to happen. There's like so many superheroes in that same scene. Like there's so many ways that could have gone. It's like, why did he have to snap?
That's all. See, I thought that part was well earned.
The thing is, I think both of you have gotten to like the only reason I can think like a movie like Dune stands out over the rest, or like other movies like Dune, and like to me, it's intimacy, because really, because that kind of like it elevates the stakes no matter what the scope of the movie is, really, because if you get those relationships down and you get people caring in that way, and also because it kind of leads arcs, like if you can really get intimacy and it works and those relationships work, like that in itself leads your story, or it supports the story in a way that like a Marvel movies a lot of the time they have like the story beats, but they don't feel like they're supported by like a legitimate way. It feels like it's there through a montage or something, but it doesn't feel grounded.
Yeah.
So it's like end of the world story every time, you know?
Yeah. So like you see what you're supposed to, I guess. Like you see the relationship that's trying to be like delivered, and you see like those arcs, but like at a certain point for me it feels kind of hollow. But then you get the reinforcement of the fact that there's like 20 or 30 movies, so at a certain point that character is that character. Like they've done this, like that actor's done it like 5-10 times at least. So like they kind of have the leverage where it doesn't matter. Like but like
I sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, but then I was just gonna say, in like a single movie, at least for Dune, it's like it's part one right now. Like you don't have that leeway, so it matters more when it's grounded. So like in Dune, you can feel it, like relationships, they choose where to focus on relationships, probably like 5 or 6 are really highlighted in the whole movie. But in them, like you can really feel the connection there. And then you can feel the arc through it. You can feel like the love, you can feel the loss, you can feel like the grief, you can feel all the stages, and it means something. And then that puts Dune,
Yeah, I do think like Denis Villeneuve's films all do that same thing, where the relationships are set up in such a way that the sci-fi elements almost take a backseat.
Mm-hmm.
Like Arrival, you cry at the end because of like what the woman's been through and like what she says about her experience, not because there was aliens and the missiles were going to destroy the world or whatever the case was. It was like the weight of that film comes from the characters and their relationships to each other, not the stakes. The stakes just sort of make it more interesting and put them in this position. I was going to say too, Luca, I think maybe like part of your like why the Marvel movies feel like mean less to you, in that sort of like the relationships feel like forced or like sudden or stuff like that, is because like you're not like a comic book fan from before. So like you're seeing this movie sort of like coming into it like, with a blank slate. Whereas like I feel like the hardcore like comic book fans come in, and when things are different from how they are in the comic books, they bring with them like certain implications that make those decisions like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they decided to kill Gwen Stacy in this time, or does that mean this thing is going to happen? And so like the speculation runs rampant, and that's the appeal.
I understand that, but then doesn't that make you kind of a bad filmmaker? Like, shouldn't you be establishing those connections for me who hasn't seen it, Like, I haven't read the comic. Shouldn't you do the work in the film to establish those relationships, to put the stakes in? Not just be like, oh, you've read this comic. Like, here's Gwen Stacy, here's Spider-Man, here's what's-her-face. And like, here's what happens. Like, shouldn't you put the effort in each movie to like make a good movie every time, not to be thinking of the universe? Like, there's entire Marvel movies that are commercials for other Marvel movies. Like, Age of Ultron is pretty much a trailer for every other Marvel movie. Like, it's literally like,
Age of Ultron's bad. I'll give you that.
It was terrible.
It's not a good movie.
It was garbage, and there was nothing good about it. I hated that movie. Like, it was literally, let's take the same plot of the first Avengers and do it again.
Yeah.
And then let's add a character we can kill to like make it seem kind of like heavy.
Yeah, I think it's like it's tough to weigh, right? I think we talked about this when we spoke about Wheel of Time last week. Is that like, who are you making this for? Are you making it for the book fans? Well, then there's certain things that you're not going to be able to include that they'll already know, so you don't need to include them. But if you're making it for the general audience, you can't skip those things, or you have to change them to a point where they become digestible in the format that you're telling the story. So then you get into a point where, oh, these casual fans really like the show, but the book fans, they don't appreciate the changes we've made. I don't know if Marvel has that same issue because they've appealed to such a wide audience, but I think it's interesting still.
Source material.
Yeah.
They don't adapt a single timeline of a comic book. They can do whatever they want.
Sometimes they do, and sometimes they pull from like different things, but then you don't have to be faithful because this is just another. But I mean, that's a comic book thing in general. Just,
I think my issue with it is they feel like generic action movies with the skin of comic book heroes, like Dune doesn't feel like a generic sci-fi movie. It feels like a story in a science fiction world. Like, it feels like a real story being told in the world of science fiction, whereas a lot of Marvel movies just feel like action stories with superheroes. Like, there's no human elements to them.
I think that's an interesting point. I don't know if I feel that way about Marvel movies. Like, I feel like some Marvel movies are stories that just happen to be about comic book characters, but I can definitely get that action movie feel.
The only movie that I remember being like, wow, this is an interesting like character development was like when Iron Man was dealing with like severe depression and anxiety after he,
which is one of the most maligned Marvel Cinematic Universe movies.
Yeah,
Like
it was
critically
Iron Man
slandered.
2 or 3. I don't remember
Three,
which
yeah.
one. Yeah, 3. And it was
nah. It's slander for a reason. Trash
no,
ass movie.
I'm not saying it was a good movie.
I enjoy that film.
Yeah,
I think people. The big thing I remember was like the Mandarin being like an issue.
Awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
I love that.
That was true garbage.
And he came back in Shang-Chi.
Yo, and that's another thing. They can just retrospectively change garbage writing decisions because they keep making these movies and then make it seem like, oh yeah, we thought of this ahead of time. Like, no, you didn't.
No, of course not. Anyway, let's get back into what makes
a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's the way, like, it's the grounded, it's the emotions. Oh, she's right. It's the intimacy you can put into a story. Like, what we love in life is relationships with people, and like when you see relationships on screen, that makes you invested, whether you like or hate them. And like whatever happens in the story, if you care about the characters, it makes it a good story, pretty much. Like, that's why I'm saying you need to make me care about your character. You can't just introduce me Spider-Man for the 9th time and expect me to care just because he's Spider-Man. Like, I need to see the human moments and see the relationship. Like, I feel like you could make all these movies so much heavier, and maybe that's what's missing. Like, they feel like they're made to be PG-13, and like sometimes you just can't tell a heavy good story in that category.
Yeah, I think like when I go into a Marvel film, I'm usually pleasantly surprised because I go in expecting something that's more towards like the PG-13. And this is like an aspect of my childhood that I'm excited to see on screen, because I didn't think we would, like, I never thought we'd get a Black Panther movie. And then seeing it and then being like, you know, happy with how it came out was like a good feeling, I guess. Mm-hmm. But like going into Dune, I don't have that same bar. I'm like, I'm expecting this to be a good movie because I've been told this is one of the greatest sci-fi novels of all time. So I go into that with like maybe higher expectations. I mean, Black Panther specifically, my expectations were high because, you know, if they dropped the ball, it would have been pretty bad. But with Dune, I don't know. It feels like even for me, like I didn't walk away from Dune being like, man, I really love the character. Like I want to see what happens. Like I want to see what happens to Paul, but like I wasn't like, oh man, this is my guy. Or I really love.
I was riding for the Atreides.
yeah. Like I think if anyone in the whole story, Duke Leto is like the most relatable or human, and everybody else feels like duty bound and sort of robotic in that way. So yeah, I don't know. Like I didn't feel like a connection to Paul in that, like, oh, he's a guy, you know. But the world was so interesting to me, and everything it set up was the point that really got me like into it. Reading the book now, like you sort of get more into the heads of the characters. But I don't know for me if the character work itself, like maybe the relationships, sure, but the character work itself, I don't know if it was like the biggest draw. I think like part of it was like the actors they cast are so good that like, man, I want to see what how he chews this scenery up, just because it's like entertaining to watch them. But I don't know.
It's funny when I think back on the movie, like at this point I've seen it so many times, but like every performance is done extremely well as far as the character, I don't know, being who they're meant to be. Like, cause like, okay, starting off with a Paul, like I thought his arc was like, one of the things I saw as a critique was that there wasn't much that happened in the movie, but I thought his arc or his turmoil, I thought it was interesting. Like that's what drew me most to his character. Like, and then it goes back to intimacy, like, because he's like the central point of so many relationships. But at the end of the day, he's dealing with the fact that he is the central point because he's the Messiah, and no, but the funny thing is like there's moments where he doesn't understand. There's moments where he's doubtful, and there's moments where there's one would even say arrogance, or like he knows, like, and I find they're all at different points of the film, and that to me was super interesting. You're right, Oscar Isaac Leto, like every scene he was in, nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
Like Josh Brolin had the only Marvel joke. Oh, actually, no, it's funny. It's funny. Like that's one of my problems. Marvel, too many jokes.
Wait, did you talk about the wash your ass with sand?
Oh no, like the I'm smiling.
Yeah.
Oh,
like, and
because I was gonna say that's in the book.
but the thing is, fucking Jason Momoa, Duncan, Idaho. There's another little joke there too. So there's levity, but the thing is, those performances, like,
are you talking about the spitting one too?
Oh yeah, okay. Well, no, but that. Yo, that's grounded. That's grounded.
Yeah,
that's funny, but it's like it's not what Marvel does, where it's like, yo, did you see me? I told a joke. Yo.
Yeah, no, I've always said this, and to me, this is why Lord of the Rings is like 20 years later still like the gold standard of adaptation, is because there's never like a modern moment. There's one I'll get to in a sec, but there's never like a moment where they throw in like modern humor to be like, oh, we're still breaking the fourth wall here. You guys still watching? It's always like everyone who's in the scenes believe the ridiculous shit they're saying. Mm-hmm. Like when you hear Elrond speak, it's like, oh, he really he was there at the beginning of time or whatever the fuck he's saying. Like he just says it with such like, I don't know, like conviction. Yeah, that it's like,
it's funny because it's real. Like,
yes,
not because it's a joke.
Yeah, like comedic relief always takes me out of, like, that's the biggest difference. Matt, you know this, Hobbit versus Lord of the Rings. Like, the comedic relief in The Hobbit is constant, never ending. And it's like, tell me the story. Like, don't give me this jokes for 9-year-olds. Like, just tell me the story you're trying to tell me.
But it's actually funny because like when it's grounded and you have like those like single or like infrequent moments of levity or the jokes, they work. Mm-hmm. Like, because it just builds that intimacy and it builds the relationship. Like, say like when you finally see Duncan at the end of the movie, you know, he having to fight, and you already know what's gonna happen. You already saw. Mm-hmm. Like you feel a bit more. You laughed with him. Like he wasn't only the warrior.
Yeah.
And it's like in Marvel, yes, you get that, but it's so like force fed to you that it's like.
And just like you get that in like the generic action movies, you know, just like the non-memorable, the Expendables of the world, like
yeah, they'll find a way.
Exactly, it's like explosion joke, like
the Michael Bay formula.
Exactly, like just give me a bit more. Like stories that are memorable have weight to them. Like they have weight. Like bad things happen because bad things happen in the world. Like it's a human story. Man, anyway, that is what's missing. And that's why I was saying that's when Matt, when you said we take it for granted that we have the Marvel universe, that's what I'm saying. Maybe we do take it for granted.
No, we don't.
I think we do.
No, we don't take it for granted. It's good that it exists, but it's not taken for granted.
It's not, and I think
that it exists.
And that's why I said that it's like bringing the like, since they're so popular and since so many studios are trying to copy them, they're just bringing the bar slightly lower.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, you're also right. Yes, because we're getting like the cinematic universes of everything now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm
think
like,
about
man, when fucking
dude,
sweet
there's
potato fries became a thing, every fast food restaurant tried them, and they were bad, so they stopped doing them.
I
But
know.
they still exist, like, and I'm happy they do.
No, but the thing is it's like to the point where like it's you're cheating. Like I like there's making a new IP, and then there's
sure.
There's really making a new idea. Like,
Are they milking Marvel Comics? Is that the implication here?
Oh, they're definitely milking them, no question.
I don't even know if they're milking them. Like, if anything, you could still make the amount of Marvel movies if there was still like that budget put into other films. The problem is that share of the pot that goes to Marvel and it doesn't go to other film studios.
My issue with that, though, is that people do not watch indie films and they don't go to those smaller budget films. And I think there needs to be a little bit of ownership on that.
We can still get people to watch Warner Brothers and the other.
Yeah, but they're doing DC and they're doing it terribly.
Yo, no, but that's the thing. Warner Brothers didn't need to do that. They had Nolan. Like they had Tenet. Like why like that's better. Like,
but yeah, I mean, this is why I say we take it for granted, right? Just because when you look at it, it's always going to be operating off a business standpoint. Like Denis Villeneuve didn't get to do Dune because they were like, it sounds like it's going to be really good. They said this thing is popular and people will come and see this. So yes, we'll greenlight this first movie for you. And if it does well, you could do the other two. That's the agreement, obviously, right? And so the Marvel, not only are they making billions of dollars, but they're also being enjoyed by the people who are watching them, which you can't say the same thing for things like the DC universe or all these other cinematic universes we're getting. The quality hasn't been there. People don't spend money to go see them.
You're right. But it's like, but it's almost the same thing as Disney, where you're shaping the form. Like you're shaping the way movies are going to be made. You're shaping the way movies are going to be written. You're shaping
exactly. That's what you're shaping the future of cinema, and I don't like where it's going. Like I don't like the direction. I don't want everything to try and copy Iron Man.
But I think we're not going to see that continue further than it has now, because when you look at the failures people have been experiencing by trying to copy Marvel's formula, like it doesn't work for everybody. It worked for Marvel, maybe because they were the first ones to it, but it's just not working for other people. So I don't know. Like I definitely understand what you guys are saying. Like, and don't get me wrong, Disney's a monopoly and monopolies are bad, whatever they do, whether it's entertainment or resources. But I just don't know if like stamping like Marvel is like irresponsible filmmaking because other people will try to copy you.
No. Like I said, like all Marvel movies are good, you know, like they're not bad movies. I mean, some of them are bad movies, but they're not on average bad movies.
Right.
The sevens.
Exactly.
Sevens across the board.
They're just never nines. They're never like the 10 out of 10. They're never the like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. Like, this is the best thing I've seen in a year. Like, this is the best movie I've seen since I don't even remember. You know?
And the thing is, they almost, it's not set up that way. Like, you obviously have the big ones, like you have an Infinity War, you have an Endgame. But most of the time, you're right. The movie is a teaser for what comes next. Exactly. Or at least it feels that way. So you're never like truly gratified. If anything, you want more. So it's like
it's the multiverse issues, the never-ending story. Like that we'll just keep.
I'm telling you, man, you got to watch Loki. I feel like
I will. I said I'll give it a chance, and I am a man of my word. I will watch it.
Good bad.
Anyway, that'll end it for my topic on what makes good story.
Yeah, I'm glad we came to a consensus. Okay, So we'll move over to Matt's meanders mumblings. And Ochi, I knew you were coming on the show today, and it reminded me of something Lucas said a couple weeks ago. In that